everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations. And I'm super excited to have another conversation today about one of my favorite topics, which is community. And I'm excited to have that with one of my favorite people, Jaclynn Brennan, who runs an awesome community, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today. But we're going to talk about a lot of things community based: pros, cons, wins, failures, all the things that come with really anything, but specifically, we're going to talk about communities today. And as always, this is not just a conversation for the two of us. So, for those of you who are joining us live, please get in the comments, share your thoughts, questions, insights, ideas, experiences about your communities or lack thereof. And get in the conversation today, because the whole point of this series is to give you guys opportunities to be in the conversations that perhaps we don't get to be in all the time. And a lot of us want to have personal growth, make personal leaps and bounds in these arenas, but we're not in the conversation. So that's just not going to happen if we're not in the conversation. So here we are today, and look at all of our peeps joining us. Carol Jean, always good to see you, my friend. Eric coming in from Aberdeen. Hi, Eric and Belwinder. Oh, you guys are great. So glad to see you today. So let's give you guys a little bit of an introduction to my friend Jaclynn, because from the first time we met, we really bonded over the power of community. So it's going to be really fun to chat about this today. So Jaclynn, tell our viewers a little bit more about who you are and why you're so passionate about communities.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm so excited to be here today. Hello, everybody. I'm Jaclynn Brennan. I go by Jax, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Feely. Feely stands for tribe in Greek and family in Latin, and we are a female founders mastermind. So, what is that? We are a NAS business, network as a service, peer-to-peer mentorship. We do accountability, education, support, and funding opportunities for diverse early stage female founders. And I also run Creative Duality, a branding and marketing agency.
Oh, which was one of the things that attracted me to Jaclynn in the first place, because I believe everything is duality. Let's be honest. Even me right now, right? I spent most of my evening at the hospital, all of which is fine. But I got home at about 4 a.m. and I was like, you know what? I'm having this live today because I know talking about community is going to make me feel reinvigorated. And so duality, you guys, it exists in life. So let's not pretend that it doesn't. And maybe let's just even hop into the conversation in terms of duality there, Jaclynn, because I know when we talk about things like community, oftentimes we talk about the good things, right? We feel supported. We see these things about how people have been able to build Facebook groups of 5, 10, 15,000 people, right? And you're just like, oh, look at all these wins. I should go make myself a community. I myself, not a fan of shoulds. So what are some of the things that we need to remember? There are the good things. We're going to talk about them, but what are some of the other pieces of the conversation that we don't address enough, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad that you're bringing this up. When I launched Feely 3 years ago with my co-founder, Summer, who's originally from China, this was a passion project because it was something we both needed. We needed this community. We went out there and we joined every female founders group that we possibly could, but they were not addressing the needs that we had, which is really learning about vesting schedules, raising capital, what lawyers to hire, how to structure your business, the type of support we need as women as we show up to run and build a business. And I think oftentimes entrepreneurship, especially in today's world, is over glamorized. We get to see the highlight reels on Instagram. We get to see the wins on LinkedIn, all the good things. But what people don't get to see are the hours that are put in, the sacrifices. When we have personal chaos or conflict in our lives, we still have to show up with a smile and be there to incentivize our teams, to hype everybody up, and to keep going, especially when it's really hard. And we're human, we're not robots. So who do we turn to in those moments of hardships? Our community. Having a community is so important for founders. And I'm going to tell you a few top reasons why. One, your family and friends might not get your journey, right? We love them so much, but as an entrepreneur, you need other entrepreneurs around you that are in the thick of it, building, growing, learning, failing, trying. You need that kind of support when you're starting your own company. And sometimes your family and friends, they just don't have that same understanding, and we love them and they give us support in another way, but you need your entrepreneurship community. Number two, you need that community because your employees are going to look up to you, and you can't show them the chaos and the hardship because you got to keep going and you got to incentivize them. So that's another reason why you need it. And then number three, your journey and your mental health is so important. The amount of stress that we go under as founders 7 days a week is really hard. And there are breaking points of burnout, of exhaustion, of fatigue, and that community can help motivate you, hold you accountable to set healthy boundaries, and just keep you going. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Tracy.
Yeah, and I just it's funny because my experience when I worked in corporate, I was always surrounded by people, right? I didn't work for, well, at one point I worked for a huge company, realized that was not for me. I slowly scaled my way back to working in startups. And so you are always surrounded by people, whether that's 10 or 20 people. But it was really lacking this concept of community. So there's people in a space, and then there's a community. So in your experience, Jaclynn, kind of like when you were like, I'm in all these communities and I'm not really getting what I'm needing, what are some of those things that people miss when it comes to like creating a group of people versus creating a community of people?
Yeah. So when you're creating a community of people, the main thing that you're thinking about is intentionality. You're aligning with people who are going to align with your core values, your mission, and have the same drives or motivations. That's what you're really looking for in community. It's really important to have diversity in community because you want people with different perspectives, different views on life that will affect the way you view life. So as you're building a sense of community, and this is the beautiful part of a mastermind, you're looking for individuals that each bring their own unique superpower and skill set. So you want to connect with people that might do something different than you do because they're going to change your mentality or your thought perspective. When you're just around a lot of people all the time, there's no intentionality behind it. You're just grouped together. So the type of connection is different. And when I think of mastermind, that term was coined in 1925 by Napoleon Hill. And there's a great book. This is why one of the big reasons why I started Feely. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And he really coined that notion of mastermind. He always said, I might not be the smartest man in the room, but if I surround myself with the best, together we move mountains. And that's what we do with Feely. It's that peer-to-peer mentorship in our cohorts. Every person sitting at that table has their own unique superpower and skill set. So together, you can work together to move mountains. And that's what you have to think about in community. What do you bring? Where are you lacking? And where are you aligned? Where do you need that support?
Yeah, I think that this is a very commonly just, I think people don't think about it when they're thinking about communities. They think about the platform that they're going to use, or they think about how many members they need to have and how am I going to sell people into this, right? And we lose this concept of what are our values? What do people feel when they were here? But also, like my friend Paul Horry, he always talks about how belonging is related to a give and a take, right? So it's not just like I go into a place and I feel like I belong. I contribute to the belonging. And so
Exactly.
when you look at a community, it isn't about just coming and taking. And this is actually interesting. This is how I do conversations. Jaclynn and I had this whole like strategy of what we're going to talk about, and now I'm going in a completely different direction. Um, but when we look at like how we set up, like again, like we go out and we're like, okay, maybe we're in this category of should, right? Let's come back to the shoulds. We should create a community. And regardless of whether you're like a founder and you're like, okay, I want to treat my employees like a community, or you're an entrepreneur and you're creating a business model that is based on building a community, this point of intention, like what is your intention, what do the people do, what do they give, but also what do they take, is an important conversation to be in. So for some of the members of your community, Jaclynn, what are those like, I mean, let me rephrase this question. What I'm trying to get at is we live in a world of consumption. Right? I think people have patterns of consuming. So when they join a group or come and listen to a LinkedIn conversation, they do it from a perspective of consumption. And so how do we broaden this in the community conversation to help people understand, like words like mastermind are a good start. What are some of the other things we can do to help people understand that when you're participating in a community, it is a give and take, and we're expecting you to give what you can, because what you have is awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So breaking that down, I believe that the first step of this is understanding what is your superpower, what you can bring, and what makes you special. What do you enjoy? What do you have to contribute? And that's where we start. Not many people, especially when they're just starting a business or pivoting a career change, leaving corporate job, it's almost like losing your identity that you've known for so many years. And it's really hard to just define what skill set or what expertise you're going to bring to the table. So pulling in some work that I do from Creative Duality, helping people find their purpose path and their superpower, what makes them unique and special, that's the first step. Because you have to know what you're bringing to the table before you can contribute, because then you don't know what you can contribute. So it's getting really clear on, what do I love to do? What brings me truly joy? What am I really good at that comes natural to me, like my own skill sets and natural talents and abilities? And what do I feel comfortable sharing authentically with other people to help them rise and elevate them? So for me, it's doing that work, helping people refine their journey, their story, their own identity to be able to help them contribute. That's my superpower. So it's knowing what that is first. And then it's thinking about, okay, how can I show up for people in my community? Something that we do within Feely. Oh, hi, Alicia. Something that we do within Feely is we have these roundtable discussions monthly with our cohort members, and we teach women how to make asks. And this is such a powerful tool, because as women, we're conditioned not to ask for things, to be polite, not take up too much space, right? So we teach them how to make thoughtful, intentional asks. And when we make those asks, people are able to contribute with their superpowers. And then it's a win-win for the entire community. So that's a really powerful moment that we have every single month in our roundtables. We're actually doing one tonight and one tomorrow. So it's really about intentionality, getting clear on what you can contribute, and then making your asks very intentional so that people can help you and you can receive that.
Ooh, I think this is a really interesting point, because how many of us have been in those coffee chats or networking events where people ask, how can I help you? And you're like,
Me. I've been there.
Also me, right? It's really interesting because a lot of us, and I think specifically from the female perspective, but I know a lot of men who are like this as well. Like there's just this really big giving part of us, right? And we want to give our time and we want to share our impact. But when it comes to us asking for something in return, we don't think we deserve it. And that really comes back to like owning your voice, owning the fact that you do bring something to the table. And that, well, this was one of my favorite things actually shared by my very good friend Carl Sean Watkins on some live at some point, was about how when you are surrounding yourself, community, with people who are like you and you are a giver, those people also like to give. And when you don't let them give you help, it actually hurts them. They would rather help you than not help you. But they need some clarity on how that can happen. And we don't always have that clarity in the immediate moment, right? Like, especially when it comes to how a personal thing might be impacting our work. Sometimes what we need is space, right? And that's another thing that a community does a very good job of creating, is just space for people to be, right? I mean, I don't know. So a lot of you in the chat here are your Business Beefs members. I feel like at least one person cries in every networking event, just because of whatever they're dealing with is heavy, and they know that it's a safe place for them to do that. And that's another thing. And before we came online, Jaclynn, we were talking about the mental health pandemic and the concepts of psychological safety, and we talk about them a lot in terms of the like corporate work environment. But it's equally important to be able to create those types of spaces when we're in a community.
100%. Absolutely. We all need time to process. We need time to share. We're not robots. We need human connection. We need it. We crave it. And having that human connection, being able to be vulnerable, to let the guard down, to share where we're at, that's the power of community. It truly helps. It does. And it's like that. That saying, check on your strong friends, because they need it the most. When you're always having to be strong and be on, it's really challenging because you're holding space for so many people, especially community leaders, right? So it's important even for us to have those safe spaces where we can express and share so that we can rebuild ourselves, refill our cups. That is super important, especially as a founder.
Yeah. Well, and as you mentioned at the beginning, Jaclynn, you created this community because it was something you were missing, right? So this isn't just a community for other people, this is a community for me too. And if I can't show up here and get what I need based on the intention of the community, then is the community really doing its job? Because first and foremost, I created this because I needed a place to be able to exist safely. And I didn't have that. Carol Jean is sharing a really great point. As a neurodistinct, diversity and inclusion within community is so very crucial to thriving in life across the board, to know we belong and we're not alone. I think this is just such I mean, anything that comes back to diversity and inclusion, I think is just a beautiful concept. But again, it's important to remember that unless you go into the building of your community with the intention of creating belonging or creating diversity, I mean, and it's interesting for me. So I have a son. I grew up with sisters, so I'm on the like female empowerment train, and now I have a son. Not that I'm not on the female empowerment train. I believe everybody should be empowered, is what I believe. But it's been so interesting for me to explore some of the narratives that boys are raised with, which are just bunk. Right? They're just like, I remember once sitting in the car with my husband and him telling me that women were the gentler sex. And I was like, for real? It's like, let's talk about this. Yes. My son was sleeping in the back. And I was like, for one, if you looked at our relationship, would we say that I'm the gentler of the two? In our specific relationship, no. And all relationships are different. So there's no like right or wrong there. But I looked at my son sleeping in the back and I'm like, I'm not fine with him being raised to think that he can't be gentle because women are the gentler sex. I don't believe in that. I believe that gentleness should be celebrated by society, and regardless of what gender you are or non-binary, right? Absolutely. Whoever you are, whatever human you are, you get the opportunity to be gentle if that feels like an authentic part of you. And so it's been like a really big intention for me from the beginning to be able to create a space where men can also find the space to have these types of conversations that, quite honestly, most of society says, no, you're not allowed to have these. And I'm like, well, I don't want my son growing up in a world like that. So I'll create a space where that's available. Very minimally, he can join your business peeps when he's 18, right? He couldn't join now. He'd be way too big of a distraction. He loves a good video chat though. But like, these are the things, right? And these are the decisions that we make based on our own experience, right? You guys heard Jaclynn's experience at the beginning. I create my spaces based on my experience. And there's really nothing else that you can create a community based on, right? It's just to keep that intention very clear so that when I want to go to Balwinder's comment and then I want to talk about community growth. So Balwinder is sharing, yes, be part of a safe community where you can let your guard down. Glad to be part of one great community where I can do that. Mwah. Sending lots of love to Balwinder. We are in a couple communities together. Let's talk about community growth, because I think this piece about intention can sometimes get lost once we get into like growth phase, right? And we start to become, I mean, we talked about community. It's a combination of people, right? So it's not just the founders. It's like everybody who's there who contributes to the culture of the community. And as you grow, there's more people, more personalities, more wants, more needs, right? And there's a conversation to be had about how that grows in a way that's sustainable and all of these things. So what are some of the things, Jaclynn, that you've seen? Because I know that you have grown Feely quite substantially. Like, what were some of the bumps in the road in terms of staying true to what the intention of the community really is?
I love that. Thank you so much for asking me this question, Tracy, because it's something that's always on my mind. This started out as a passion project because it was something that I loved and we needed. And now today, global business with investment coming in, growing and scaling in a huge way, opening our first cohort in Shanghai, China in January. So I am very intentional about how we keep this special, how we keep the intention as we continue to scale. And I really think it comes down to that human connection and that really like hands-on touch approach, especially any company as you're raising capital, venture capital. They want you to grow and scale in 10x, and it's about the numbers and it's about the return and your MRRs and how much revenue you're generating. But as a community, it's slow and steady growth. It's intentionality. It's really making sure that you're delivering the best value you can to your members. And that's something that I keep in my mind every single day. It's on my whiteboard in my office. It's something that I remind myself. And how do we do that? I think it's constant reevaluation and priorities. It's every quarter we set OKRs. And we talk about them with our team of not only what are the goals that we have to hit, but how do we be intentional as we're keep scaling. Some things we have to shift and change. Some things we have to come back on because we're growing too fast, or we have to make sure that we're delivering that value. And I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to showing up for your other members and the individuals that are within the community and being able to make sure that they are contributing, getting value always, and being able to shift and pivot when it's necessary. It is something that I think about all the time. And one of my advisors for Feely is Nick Jones, the founder of Soho House. When he started that global community, before taking investment and scaling to 50 locations all over the world, he always mentioned to me that his notion was always to put community first and slow and steady, constantly get feedback from your members and iterate as you go. So it's having those touch base points that's really helped us with Feely. COVID was a huge proponent of our scale and our growth when the world shut down in 2020. We just put out 150 free master classes with some of the top instructors that we were able to contact, and just offering value, just pumping our community with free value just to be there to support individuals. And then that turned into a new product that we launched. So putting people first and human connection.
Yeah. And I think one of the things people miss when you're in the internet of things, people are often talking about giving value, right? You got to show up, you got to give value. There's how you want to show up and give value is also heavily rooted in who you are, your goals, your intentions, your personal brand, right? So how I show up and provide value is not exactly the same way Jaclynn shows up, or Carol Jean shows up, or Balwinder, or Alicia, right? Like all of us show up naturally to create value in a different way. And one of the things I love to just remind people to pay attention to is what are the ways that are fun for you in which you show up to give free value, right? So some of you might be thinking 150 master classes, that sounds like a nightmare, right? Maybe master classes isn't your way to show up and give free value, right? There's infinite amounts of ways. I'm a big proponent of, I like to do things that no one else is doing. So I have to try and find something that feels like Tracy. Sometimes that's more of a challenge because there's lots of people doing lots of things. But when it comes to your personal brand and how you want to show up that way, it's about like just exploring, listening, right? Like, oh, Tracy does LinkedIn lives. Maybe I'll try LinkedIn lives. Jaclynn does masterclasses. Maybe I'll try masterclasses. And if you like it, great, keep it. If you don't like it, great, get rid of it. You don't have to keep doing anything that you don't want to do. And if you find that your community or your business has too much in it that's no longer a good reflection of you, you can peel it away, right? That can happen. We can get, I mean, this is definitely happened to us with your business peeps, right? Like we had this, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh, you know what would be cool? It'd be cool to have like focus bubbles where people just like come in and work together and just be quiet. And we're like, oh yeah, we could do that, right? Like, yeah, we could do it. Except the point of your business peeps is to come and show up in conversation. So having a thing where you come and show up in silence, not aligned with the goals of the community. And so we ended up not doing that, even though it was recommended or it was requested from a lot of our members, because that's not what we're here for. And there's lots of great people who run focus bubbles. And if you want a recommendation, please reach out to me and I will give you one. But one of the I'm blanking on the name of the author of the book right now, but there's a book that I actually love to listen to on loop on Audible called The Art of Gathering.
Oh, such a good one.
If you guys are watching and you haven't read it or listened to it, just get it. It's really interesting just to listen to the whole point about being to some degree exclusive so you can be the most inclusive. Right? And it's a really interesting topic because you're like, whoa, no, we can't talk about exclusion. All we talk about in today's environment is inclusion, right? Like we're here to include people. But one of the really great examples in the book was that there had a group of them in college who would go on this summer beach trip. And only the group would go. And then people started like getting married and all of those things. And it came to the point where they were like, well, do we invite the spouses? Like, what do we do here? And people had different opinions, right? Some people were like, no, we can't invite anybody except the like original crew. And people were like, well, the more the merrier, right? And the point at the end of the day was that there was one member who had not come out to his greater community, but he felt like in that small personal group, he could be totally himself. And as soon as they ended up voting on, I think they ended up voting to invite the spouses, and then he didn't come because it was no longer safe for him to do so. And so his inclusion was dependent on the exclusion of others. And so in Jaclynn's community, right? Like that is it's a community for female founders. Specifically, it's not a community for male founders. It's not a community for females who are not founders, right? Like it's specifically for female founders because these are the types of things female founders need that we can't get elsewhere.
And I think you said something really important. If it's choosing how we're going to show up within community. We can't be everything to everyone, right? Because then we don't have the way to make the most impact, right? So in my vision of creating Feely with our team, it's about creating impact. And we knew that we can deliver the most amount of impact in these cohorts, which are essentially community within community. Our global community for Feely is 10,000 women all over the world. Our cohorts are groups of 10. We have many of them running. They're on rolling basis. We open one every quarter. So the way that we can create the most impact are doing these small group pairings. That's it. It's really important what you just said. It's about that intentionality and community within a community to make the most impact so you feel safe, seen, heard, and you can show up as your authentic self.
Yeah. And I think that also ties back into what we were talking about in terms of kind of owning what you know, right? So if you guys are listening to this conversation today because you have a community or you're interested in building your own community or you want to treat your work environment like community, it's important to keep these things top of mind because if you there are things that Jaclynn knows because of her experience and because of what she's seen work and not work in the community. It's the reason why with all of my one-on-one coaching programs, I give a 3-month membership to your business peeps because I know one of the most important parts of owning your personal brand is showing it to other people, specifically strangers. And that might be a unique perspective to me. And I am fine with that because it's something I know that works. And I build my community and my programs around what I know works. And so, although we shared a lot of really great nuggets with you guys today, it's not really about coming here and being like, okay, so Tracy does this, Jaclynn does that. I'm going to do all of that together and all the things that these 8 other people say. And I'm going to combine all these things and do all the things. This is not what it's about. It's about being part of the conversation so that you can explore what feels right for you, what you know to be true through your experience, and building that confidence in yourself to say, like, hey, I do know something about this. If I didn't, I wouldn't be like so passionate that there's a gap. I think a lot of people create communities because of gaps, right? That's
Absolutely.
Jaclynn's story, my story exactly as well, right? People, this is what I need, and no one else is doing this. They keep trying to sell me this concept of community, but really all it is a whole bunch of people in a Slack channel, and 10% of them talk to each other, and 5% of people get to talk on a weekly group coaching call. And I so I was in a program once, and one of the ladies, like, I had noticed that I hadn't seen her on any of the Q&A calls lately. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, how's it going? And she's like, yeah, I just haven't been around for like the last 4 months and nobody seemed to notice. Is that what a community is about? Like, that broke my heart. And then I promptly paid a big cancellation fee to get out of that community because that was not the right place for me. First investment in my personal brand. But that is not what communities are about, you guys. And when we make, Jaclynn mentioned the kind of the slow growth, right? When we make a community about numbers, whether that's a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group or a platformed community, right? When you make it about the numbers, you lose the other intention. And it's not that you can't pay attention to the numbers, right? We're running a business, right? So at the end of the day, the numbers do matter. But I really loved your point, Jaclynn. I'd love to come back to this, is that these have to be in conversation together, right? You have to maintain the integrity of the intention of the community. And yes, we want to grow. We want to be able to support more people, right? There's not enough female founders in your example that have this kind of support. And we want to be able to support as many of them as possible. And we want to make sure they have this experience. So, how do we do that? That is like, I feel like in the world, specifically in politics, if the question was more often, how can we bring these two things together, instead of, well, these two things are inherently head to head and they have to choose one, that's our mindset problem right there. Like, having a successful business in terms of revenue and having a successful business in terms of how you're creating the impact you want are not mutually exclusive. You can have both. It just has to stay in the conversation together.
Exactly. 100%. 100%. That's what it's about.
So good. Jaclynn, thank you so much for joining me in this wonderful conversation today. If people want to learn more about Feely or more about you and your community building ideas or creative disruption in general, where is the best place for people to find you?
So they can find us at feelytribe.com, specifically anything Feely related. If you are a female founder, if you're feeling like you're needing more support, if you're feeling like you're needing some type of accountability, please join us. Applications are open. They're on a rolling basis. We're opening new cohorts every few months. You can also check us out on Instagram at Feely Tribe or LinkedIn Feely Tribe. And my personal is just my name, Jaclynn Brennan. And I'm really proud of our community, of how we get to show up. Some quick impact stats that I'd love to share because I'm celebrating that win. We've helped our founders raise over $2.5 million of funding in early stage pre-seed capital. We've helped founders prevent burnout. We help founders get advisors, know how to make their ask, feel supported within a community, create partnerships, and help them level up personally and professionally. So if that sounds like something you need, please reach out. And Tracy, thank you for having me. Highlight of my day. Thank you for showing up. Even though you had a tough night, you showed up and you're here for your business and for your own community. And I really appreciate you.
Oh, and I so appreciate you, Jaclynn. I know it took us a little while to get this recording on the calendar, but it was never a question of whether or not we were going to get it on the calendar. It was about how we were going to get it on the calendar, which is why we're here on a Tuesday instead of a Friday. But hey, we got a lot of great people in the chat, so maybe I should try some more Tuesday episodes. And thank you guys in the chat. So Carol Jean is thanking us for a powerful conversation, but this is a group conversation, you guys. This conversation got to be as powerful as it was because you came, you participated in the comments, you shared your thoughts, you shared your opinions, and same thing with you, Jaclynn. One of my favorite things about you is that you're going to get the truth, but you're going to get it in a way that just feels good. Right? So that even if there's hard truths, right? There's hard truths in building communities. There's hard truths in growing a business. There's hard truths in going through a job search. There's hard truths in your personal life, right? There's hard truths. But when you can find your people that you know, when you hang out with them, you're going to feel lighter, better, more energized, more confident, right? Those are your people. So once you find those people, hold on to them tight. Do not let them go. And then do a LinkedIn Live with them so you can wake yourself up after 4 hours of sleep. Did you see what I did there? Thank you so much, Jaclynn, and all you guys in the chat for a wonderful conversation about community. I value each and every one of you as part of my community, and I hope you know that. I'll do a better job of reminding all of you because you are all very near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate you all so much. This is actually one of 2 conversations that we're having this week. So if you feel like being an early bird, for those of you who are in North America, we have a 9 a.m. Eastern session that's going on Thursday as well. And we're going to be talking about how what we wear impacts our confidence and how we show up in front of other people, with the lovely Izora Zama coming to us all the way from France. So if that is, you will want to be there. She's so lovely. Her smile is just, it'll light up your day. It'll start off your Thursday in a wonderful way. So watch for the invites coming out later today for that one if you want to get it on your calendar. And again, I want you guys just to remind you that there is power in community. And if you want to explore power in community, reach out to me, reach out to Jaclynn. We'd love to chat with you, and see how you can have more of that power in your day today. Okay, that was a really long wrap up, so I'm actually going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. And until next time, permission to do you.